So hi there students, welcome back to another video lesson. So previously we have discussed measures of position, quartiles of group data. So now we will be discussing the next type, which is deciles of group data. So for our lesson objectives, we will calculate and interpret the measures of position, particularly deciles of group data. So dun sa discussion natin on quartiles of group data, so halos same lang din naman ang process dito, kaya lang since deciles ang pinag-uusapan natin, yung ating data, yung ating given distribution is divided into 10 equal parts. So let us begin with defining what is a decile. So anong pinagkaiba ng decile sa quartile? Okay, so when we say deciles, these are the 9 scores which divides the data into 10 equal parts. So doon pala makikita mo na ang pagkakaiba ng deciles and quartiles. So kapag quartiles, it divides the data into 4 equal parts, and then there are only 3 scores that divides the data when in terms of quartiles. In deciles, there are 9 scores. So and then we have the root word for deci. Ayan, deci means 10. Like for example, decade. Decade is equivalent to 10 years. So decagon is a polygon with 10 sides. So let's have its illustration. Okay, so yung data natin, hinahati siya into 10 equal parts. And then, yung mga location ng ating mga scores na yan, ayan, Dsub 1, Dsub 2, Dsub 3, Dsub 4, Dsub 5, Dsub 6, Dsub 7, Dsub 8, and Dsub 9. Okay, so dito naman, ang equivalent ng bawat position na yan is 10%. For example, Dsub 1, that is 10%. Dsub 6, that is 60%. And then, we have here Dsub 5. So, yung Dsub 5 po, siya po ang nagsisilbing median. Okay, so the middle value. So, kung ang quartiles, meron siyang quartile 2, yung middle quartile. So, sa deciles naman, Dsub 5 or the 5th decile is equivalent to the middlemost value. So, therefore, we can say that Dsub 5 is equal to quartile 2. Pareho lang po yan ng value. So let us now proceed to deciles of group data. So ito po yung formula na gagamitin natin to solve deciles of group data. So kung mapapansin nyo, parang halos pareho lang siya ng quartiles of group data. It's just that, so since decile lang ating pinag-uusapan, so yung location ng ating decile value, kukunin natin siya using kn all over 10, hindi na kn over 4. Okay, and then meron pa rin naman dyan, LB, and then ayan, discuss natin yung mga variables na nasa formula. So LB is the lower boundary of the Dsub K class. So once na nasolve natin yung Dsub K class, so na-trace na natin kung saan located yung Dsub K class, ma-identify natin agad yung lower boundary. So it is impossible for us to determine the lower boundary of a given distribution unless we have determined the location of a particular class. It's either quartile class, decile class, or percentile class. Next, n is the total frequency. Okay, so this is the total number of data. Okay, so usually naman makikita naman yan sa frequency distribution table, or you just simply add the frequency of each classes, and then you will be able to identify the value of n. And then CFV is the cumulative frequency of the class before the Dsub K class. Okay, so once na-identify na natin yung Dsub K class, so dun lang po tayo titingin dun sa column ng less than cumulative frequency. So yung cumulative frequency of the class before the Dsub K class, located po siya mismo sa ibaba ng ating
Dsub K class. Okay, so yung kasunod na mas mababa. And then, frequency of the Dsub K class is the frequency of the Dsub K class. So, yun nga yung sinabi ko kanina. So, basically, madali lang naman once na-identify na natin kung ano yung Dsub K class, kung ano yung frequency ng particular class na yun, na kung saan located yung Dsub K, okay, yun po yung gagamitin nating frequency. And then I, so again, I is the size of the class interval. So again, ma-identify naman natin yung class interval and sometimes usually given siya dun sa ating table. Nasa pinaka-ibaba siya. And then, also, K is the nth decile. Okay. So dito, since decile ng pinag-uusapan natin, yung value ng n po natin, hindi na lang po siya 1, 2, 3. So it's equal to 1, 2, 3 up to 9. Okay, so since divided kasi yung data natin into 10 equal parts, so hindi naman pwedeng up to 10. Hanggang 9 lang siya. So n is equal to 1, 2, 3 up to 9. So yan po ang gagamitin nating formula to solve for deciles of group data. So let us now move on to our example. So we have height in centimeters of 30 grade 10 students in San Isidro National High School. So calculate Dsub 2, Dsub 6, and Dsub 9. So Dsub 2 that is second decile, Dsub 6 that is 6th decile, and Dsub 9 that is the 9th decile. So ito po yung ating problem. So given po yung mga height. Ayan. So since group data na po tayo, frequency distribution table na po yan. So, let's proceed to our table. So, as you can see, ayan, sa first column natin, nandyan po yung class natin. So, dyan po naka-indicate yung ating mga height, yung height ng mga students. As you can see, yung possible maximum height ng isang grade 10 student sa San Isidro National High School is 180. And then, yung minimum height naman is 151 centimeters. So, kapag kinukuha natin yung range dito, kapag group data, ang ginagawa lang po natin dito is sinusubtract natin yung upper boundary tsaka lower boundary. Okay, so, yung upper boundary natin dito is 180.5. So, mag-a-add tayo ng 0.5 sa 180. And then, yung lower boundary naman natin, magsusubtract tayo ng 0.5 dun sa 151. And that is 150.5. So, kapag sinubtract natin yon, difference that we will be getting is 30. So, ibig sabihin yung range natin is 30. Okay. So, let us now proceed to the second column. Ayan, frequency. Ayan. So, ibig sabihin, there are 8 students na kung saan yung height nila is from 176 to 180 centimeters. And then, on the third column, lower boundary. So, yan yung ating i-fill out. So, to get the lower boundary of each class, we'll just simply subtract 0.5 from the lower class limit. Okay, so yung mga pinakamababa, so yung nasa left side. So 176 minus 0.5, that is 175.5. So the easiest way to get the lower boundary hanggang dun sa pinaka-ibaba niya is to subtract the class interval, which is 5. So 175.5 minus 5, that is 170.5. So ayan. Subtract lang po ng 5. And then, of course, kapag nag-start tayo sa 150.5 pataas, that is the reverse operation. We will add 5 instead of subtracting 5. Next, the less than cumulative frequency here. So, mag-i-start tayo sa pinakababa. So, yung frequency ng 151 to 155, that is 4. So, yun po yung susulat natin doon. 4. And then, mag-a-add tayo pataas hanggang makarating tayo sa pinaka-itaas doon sa 176 to 180. So 4 plus 5, that is 9, plus 2, 11, plus 10, 21, plus 1, 22, then plus 8, 30. So how will you going to know if your answer on the lesson cumulative frequency column is wrong? So kailangan po magtali po yung total frequency, which is 30, dun sa sum sa pinakaitaas. So as you can see, 30 is equal to 30. So ayan, next na gagawin natin, magkakalculate na po tayo ng ating Dsub 2 class. So Dsub 2 class, so formula niya, kn over 10. So k, so since Dsub 2, kaya 2. And then n, ayan, nasa given natin 30 all over 10. Next, 2 times 30 is 60. And then, if we will divide 60 by 10, we will get 6. So, ibig sabihin, yung Dsub 2 class natin is 6. So, saan located yung ating Dsub 2 class? So, titingin lang po tayo dun sa less than cumulative frequency column. So, yung pinakamababa natin dito, 4. So, 4 is less than 6. So, kailangan pa natin mag-step pataas dun sa kasunod niya. So, ibig sabihin, dito po located yung ating Dsub 2 class. Ayan. So, since meron na tayong Dsub 2 class, which is yung 156 to 160 class. Ayan, dyan po located yung ating Dsub 2 class. Okay, we will now apply the formula. Okay, so Dsub k, so that is Dsub 2, and then LB, the lower boundary of the Dsub 2 class. So, ayan, yung lower boundary natin is 155.5. So, mahalaga na binibilugan natin kung saan yung class na yun para at least guided tayo dun sa mga values na sinasubstitute natin. Next, yung kn over 10 natin is 6. And then, the cumulative frequency before the Dsub 2 class, yung nasa ibaba ng 9, ito po yun, yung 4. Next, yung frequency ng Dsub 2 class natin is 5. And then, yung interval natin is 5. So, ito po siya. Next, 155.5 plus 6 minus 4. That is 2, di ba? And then, 5, yung nasa numerator, denominator, tsaka yung interval natin na 5, pwede na po yan i-cancel out. So, subtract lang natin yung 6 tsaka 4, that is 2. So, and then, we'll just add 155.5 plus 2. So, that is 157.5. So, this is the value of Dsub 2. Now, to interpret the result, so therefore, 20% of the student's height is less than or equal to 157.5 centimeters. So, since Dsub 2 yung ating hinanap na value, that is why we used 20%. So, ibig sabihin, there are 20% of the students, yung students population natin, na kung saan yung height nila is less than or equal to 157.5 centimeters. So, let us now proceed to Dsub 6. So, the first thing that we need to do here is to locate the position of the Dsub 6 class. So, kn over 10. So, k is 6, since Dsub 6 ang hinahanap natin, and then n is 30 all over 10. And then, 6 times 30 is 180. Divided by 10, so, Dsub 6 class is equal to 18. So, kung ilolocate natin yung Dsub 6 class gamit yung less than cumulative frequency column, ayan. So, yung 18 na yan, located po yan dito po sa 166 to 170. So, to explain why, as you can see, yung mga values dito sa less than cumulative frequency, yung mga nauna, 4, 9, 11, less than po yan sa 18. So, dun sa 11, hindi pwede doon, it's because masyadong mababa pa yun. So, kukunin natin yung kasunod. So, dito po yung ating Dsub 6 class. Now, after getting the position of Dsub 6 class, we will now we will calculate the value of Dsub 6. So, again, yung location ng Dsub 6 class ay nandito. So, 166 to 170 na class. Next, so applying the formula, Dsub 6. So, what is the lower boundary of the Dsub 6 class? That is 165.5 plus, ayan, the quantity of Kn over 10 minus CFB all over F D sub K. Okay, so Kn over 10 muna na tayo. That is 18, of course. And then, what is the cumulative frequency before the D sub 6 class? And that is 11. And then the frequency of the D sub 6 class is 10. And of course, the class interval is 5. Next, 165.5 plus the quantity of 18 minus 11 over 10. Okay, so 18 minus 11, that is 7 over 10 times 5. So dito, again, so kagaya dun sa quartiles, pwede nating i-divide yung nasa loob ng parenthesis, yung 7 over 10, and then i-multiply natin sa 5, or pwede nating i-multiply yung 7 sa 5, and then yung product, i-divide natin sa 10. So in this case, pwede kasi nating i-simplify yung 10 tsaka 5. So 10 tsaka 5, meron silang GCF which is 5, so 5 will become 1, and then 10 will become 2. Next, seven divided by 2, that is 3.5. Okay, next, 165.5 plus 3.5, that is equal to 169. As you can see, sakto po yung ating nakuhang sagot for D sub 6. So that is 169. So to interpret the results, therefore, 60% of the student's height is less than or equal to 169 centimeters. So D sub 6, that is why we use 60%. Okay. So what is the counterpart of 60%? That is 40%. So kung i-interpret natin yan, yung kabaligtaran niya, 40% of the student's height is greater than or equal to 169 centimeters. So why is it we use greater than? Okay, kasi mas mataas na po sa 60% yun. So yung counterpart ng 60% na mas mababa, syempre yung mas mataas, which is 40%. Hindi pwede maging 60% din. It's because lalagpas na po yun sa 100%. So last na tayo. So number 3. So D sub 9. Okay. So lolocate natin yung position ng D sub 9. So, Kn all over 10. So, K, that is 9 times the value of N, 30, all over 10. Next, 9 times 30, that is 270, divided by 10. So, d sub 9 class is equal to 27. So, ayan. So, yung pang 27 na score natin, nasan kaya yon? So, located po yon dun sa highest class natin, which is 176 to 180. As you can see, ayan, 4, 9, 11, 21, 22. Mababa po yun sa 27. And located po yung 27 sa highest class natin. So, dito siya. D sub 9 class. So, next, so we will solve for the value of D sub 9. So, yung D sub 9 class natin, again, nandito siya sa highest class natin, which is 176 to 180. So, applying the formula, so D sub 9 is equal to, the lower boundary of D sub 9 class is 175.5. And then, Kn over 10, 27, minus cumulative frequency before the D sub 9 class, that is 22. So, sa pag-determine po ng cumulative frequency before any class man yan, yung mismong kasunod niya, yung nasa ibaba niya mismo, ang kukunin natin. So, hindi natin kukunin yung 4 kasi masyadong malayo na yon. So, basta yung kasunod lang niya sa ibaba niya mismo. And then, frequency of the D sub 9 class is 8. Ayan. And then, the interval is 5. 175.5 plus the quantity of 27 minus 22 all over 8. So, 27 minus 22, that is 5 over 8 times 5. So, 175.5 plus 5 over 8. Pwede rin natin yung i-divide o kaya naman 5 times 5. Okay, so 5 times 5 is 25 over 8. So, di-divide ngayon natin yung 25 sa 8. So, ang makukuha po nating sagot is 3.125 thousandths. Okay. So, and then, i-add natin yan. We'll get 178.625, or kung i-round up natin yan, we'll get 178.63. So, that will be the value of D sub 9. Now, to interpret our result, so since D sub 9 siya, therefore, 90% of the student's height is less than or equal to 178.63 centimeters. And then, counterpart ng 90% is 10%. That is, kung interpret natin siya using that, therefore, 10% of the student's height is greater than or equal to 178.63. So, maaari yung mga height nun is 179 and 180. So, after discussing with you the deciles of group data, basically our next video lesson will be calculate and interpret the measures of position using percentiles of group data. So, we are done discussing quartiles and deciles. So, yung last natin is percentiles. So, I hope you've learned something from this video lesson. So, before you end this video lesson, make sure to subscribe, to like, and to share it as well to your students, to your co-students, to your classmates. So, that's all. Thank you.